Hey everyone, and welcome to Canada Music Reviews. I'm your host Walls, and I listen to songs by Canadian artists both big and small, break down their aesthetic qualities through musical and production analysis, and ultimately figure out why the production team's creative decisions help the song reach out and connect with its audience. Alright folks, the band we're reviewing on this episode is Incase We Crash, and I'll be looking at their 2020 release Soul Paint, off their EP of the same name. So Incase We Crash as we know them today started sometime in 2015 with Simon Austin on guitar and vocals. But what you may not have known is that Simon was playing shows in high school with a band under the same name that had completely different members than they do now. I know this because I went to high school with the bassist and drummer in the band at the time, and I saw them play at the Elmo Combo in Toronto back in 2011. I remember the bassist borrowed my bass for a good while, and that kind of helped the band, sort of, so I kind of helped them, little bit. I remember the gig was put on by the long extinct promotion company known as Supernova. Anyone who has been involved in the Toronto music scene for some time is going to cringe at the sound of this name, so I'm sorry to bring up some past traumas. And what I also remember is the passion and energy that Simon played with back then that's still seen when he performs today. Currently, the band consists of Simon Austin on guitar and vocals, Kyle Malfa on drums, and Alex Koval on guitar, who also happens to be a former member of Toronto area local bands Carried Away and Minority 905. Believe it or not, Alex was a founding member. He was the original guitar player. Anyways, Simon and Alex were a part of writing the Soul Paint EP, but Tyler Twidger? I asked Alex about this and he was no help. But Tyler Twidger was the drummer at the time who helped to write and record the EP as well. They recorded this at Room 21 Sound with well-known producer and engineer Sam Guyana, and their EP was mastered by Mike Calajan of Rogue Plant Mastering. As of right now, the song has over 116,000 plays on Spotify, with plenty more coming because honestly, it is an absolute banger. I remember Alex showed it to me a week or two before they put it out, and I was really damn impressed with the songwriting. Like, from that moment on, I knew Incase We Crash turned the corner and figured there's no turning back for him. Let's show our ears something good. So starting out this one, we have a strong vocal pickup going right into the stripped down chorus presented to us as a nice guitar and vocal duet. Just kind of sucks the air and just sets you up for like the whole opening and everything. The opening is so catchy that you just know it's the chorus, since it hooks you into the song pretty much immediately. What's cool too is halfway through the chorus at 9 seconds in, you have the hi-hat of the drums counting the beats so you know where to bop your head, just in case you weren't already doing that. This is a nice precursor to the loud instrumental section that follows, where after guitar drops out we get the full band banging through some 4-part chords, and frankly, a pretty catchy and fast-paced melody is found right after it. The chord progression in these sections tickled my ear fancy as well, as I noticed that the harmony is functioning within the Dorian scale mode, particularly F-sharp Dorian. Modes in music, explained as simply as possible, is basically taking a regular major scale, but then going up the scale, starting on a different note within the key. Our key center for Soul Paint is E major, and if we look at the E major scale as an example, you see that the scale spans 1 octave, going from the E on the first line to the E on the 4th space. There's our E major chord. That's going to be our 1 chord, and that's like the foundation and home. Now, to play the E major scale. Now if we remove our lowest E and then add a high F sharp on our 5th line, that then gives us an E major scale that starts and ends on an F sharp, therefore giving us the 2nd mode of the major scale, which is called Dorian. And that Dorian scale, F sharp Dorian, sounds like this. So you can do this with every note that exists within the scale and make a different mode in the process. The minor scale, for example, is actually the 6th mode of the major scale, meaning that in the key of E major, the relative minor scale, being C sharp minor, is just an E major scale starting and ending on C sharp. Sounds a lot like E major, right? Music theory. At about 35 seconds in, we're at the first verse and back to just guitar and vocals. Dynamically, it's just slightly bigger than the outro, and that's because we also have what sounds like a filtered kick and snare drum beat to add that little extra bit of energy. There's also these weird sliding things happening pretty quietly in the mix as we start getting into the next section, and I want to say it might be a guitar doing that. The first one definitely sounds guitar-like, but I think the second one has more of an effect coming through to distort what we're hearing just a little bit. The next section at about 53 seconds in has this cool, grainy funk bass line that really carries the momentum forward, and it starts getting my feet tapping a bit. If I'm grooving and tapping along, that's how I know it's a good bass line. Your first job as a bass player is get them on the dance floor. Play something groovy and funky that's getting people bopping their heads and tapping their feet. And if you're not doing that, you are not doing your job as a bassist. I also like how partway through the section there's these guitar scratches that help add even more forward motion to keep the pace going strong. The melodies that Simon is singing too in this section are pretty catchy as well, with lyrics that are very, very relatable to the average angsty teenager. If you're in a pop punk band, take notes. Write songs that relate to teenagers. We get another drop chorus at 1:10, and it's becoming obvious to me that the choruses won't be the biggest sections in the song from a dynamic standpoint. Rather, it seems like everything builds toward the instrumental sections that have the intro guitar melody. That seems pretty uncommon to me, especially for a local level band to be experimenting with building a song that way. It kind of deviates from the typical formula of building dynamics where typically songs would build up to the chorus. After an exactly minute-long break, we hit the guitar melody, and it sounds just as great as it did when I first heard it at the start. It's good that it goes right into the melody this time as opposed to playing just chords like in the first instrumental section. The further you get into a song, the more you have to kind of get to the point quicker and quicker, because you just want to keep the song moving. You don't want people turning it off. You just kind of have to get to the point. At the second verse around 137, we're back to the drawing board and about to start a new build-up. What I find really cool in this song is you can listen to just the verses or choruses on their own and realize that each one gradually gets bigger as well. Compare the verse and the second verse to one another and you'll notice the subtle changes that happen in each. Like how in the second verse Simon sings in a higher octave and the drum kit plays in full volume as opposed to being filtered in the first verse. The second verse is also shorter too and gets to the chorus much quicker and therefore has a much quicker build. So they know what they're doing. I think my first knock on Soul Pain is that I didn't really care about hearing the intro guitar melody a third time at 2 minutes 11 seconds. They could have possibly built up to a new or different instrumental section there, or hell, maybe going right into the bridge after the chorus could have possibly worked as well. So now that we've arrived at the bridge at 2 minutes and 20 seconds, there's a new breath of fresh air, as guess what? The harmony finally changed after all this time. The chord progression was basically the same up until this point, and you wouldn't think about it because they found ways to build their song differently and use different musical nuances to keep it interesting without changing chords. I think part of why that was able to work is because they didn't use power chords like stereotypical pop punk does, and instead opted for 4 and 5 part chords which help create much more colorful harmony content, and in my opinion, has a stronger shelf life. But anyways, the bridge is huge. We finally get the big payoff, and we have our first consistently loud section with the performance intensities in all instruments being the highest they've ever been. The payoff is also then continued by getting our final chorus at full volume as well. All of this then culminates into an even bigger outro at 2 minutes 55 seconds, where you can make the argument that it functions like a post-chorus because of the Carry You tagline and the repeated opening chorus hook that takes us to the final F sharp minor 7 chord to end off the song. Like that final chord is just kind of like you're trying to process what just happened and it's kind of like, whoa. Overall, I think Soul Pain is a well-written pop-punk song. It's chock full of catchy hooks, interesting instrumental parts, and caters to its intended audience by playing on typical pop-punk tropes while finding subtle ways to be creative and different. I'm still really impressed by the way the song builds and the fact that they got away with using the same harmony for the vast majority of the song. I think that takes some really solid arranging and musicianship to be able to pull off something like that, because off the top of my head, Brain Stew by Green Day is the only song I can think of that's using the same harmony. And you can expect Green Day to pull off something like that because they're fantastic musicians and top tier songwriters, but the fact that Incase We Crash was able to do it is nothing short of fantastic. Like my hat goes off to you. And then it goes back on. While the musical elements sound similar to some more recent pop-punk bands in the scene like The Story So Far, State Champs, and The Wonder Years, the guitar tones in Soul Pain sound a lot lighter and have a bit of a Midwest twang to them, which helps differentiate the overall aesthetic from early 2010s pop-punk a little bit. All in all, there seems to be a good amount of familiarity, but also a good amount of uniqueness as well. I remember talking with Alex about Simon's vocals, and he made a point of how unique the timbre of his voice is, and frankly, I think I have to agree with him. You can't really pinpoint a certain vocalist that he's similar to, and that's a criminally underrated aspect in order to have a unique sound to your music. Like, you hear Anthony Kiedis, you know it's a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. You hear Tim McIlrath, you know it's Rise Against. You hear Soupy, Wonder Years. There's a certain flair that Simon sings with that just isn't really done by any other vocalist, and that really helps the music not sound like a direct copy or imitation of somebody else. The production in this recording is especially solid too. Sam Guyana is another sought-after engineer within the Toronto music scene that works with a lot of different bands in the immediate area and beyond. He also works in the same space as Anton DeLoss, known as Room 21 Sound, and both of them make up for something like 99% of Toronto local and signed band recordings. I mean, that's not a real statistic, but anyone in a GTA pop-punk band knows that a lot of bands go record with Sam and Anton, and for great reason. What separates the two of them is that Sam generally works with a lot of heavier bands, while Anton leans more on the pop-oriented side of the coin. So as a result, Sam's production style is naturally going to be heavier and more harsh. Though with Incase We Crash, Sam tapped into a brighter aesthetic, which is a little more uncommon for him, but he'll always do what's best for the music he's hired to produce, record, mix, and ultimately bring to life. I like the general theme of the lyrics, and the way that I'm interpreting them is the metaphor of painting yourself gold represents self-improvement to become your best self while learning from your mistakes and achieving everything you want to in life. Gold is a great color to use for this, as historically that color is associated with being number one. I think they're pretty relatable for the most part, though now that I looked over all the lyrics, the first verse about middle school and love seems slightly out of place with the rest of it. But the angsty youth that Incase We Crash is targeting will hear that and run with it, while also perceiving the rest of the lyrics how they want to. All in all, the song is sick. It's familiar enough to be perceived as pop punk while also having some subtle originality brought in to slightly separate it from what other bands are doing. And it connects to its listeners with its catchy melodies and pop punk aesthetics. I don't want to say it's a unique sound, but it's got its different sides. They're gonna do fine. I think they're gonna go where they want to go. Anyways guys, thank you so much for tuning into Canada Music Reviews. If you liked what you saw, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with your friends. Let me know in the comments if there's some other bands I should be looking out for. I know a lot of bands, but I don't know all of them, so if you want to send some my way, I'll check them out. So I hope to see you at the next episode, and remember, don't take anything personally except kindness. Thank you.